All right, cool. So thank you guys for coming to our Canvas CIG. I'm going to go ahead and share up this little kind of welcome slide that we got here just to kick things off. So today we have Gus from Instructure. I'm sure a lot of you guys know him, and if you don't, he's a good guy to get to know. He's going to be talking to us today about the new analytics tool in Canvas, which is available in beta currently. And then, you know, it's one of those things that got shown at InstructureCon, got a lot of interest, and we wanted to, you know, give you guys the opportunity to see a little bit more about it, and then also open this up to just kind of conversation. Since we do have Gus here today, so we can go ahead and any questions that are lingering or questions specific to the tool or just Canvas in general, that we could kind of wrap things up with just more of an open kind of conversation, see what you guys got. A couple housekeeping items per usual. If you're not speaking, go ahead and mute your microphone just so we have things, we don't have distracting noise in the background. Please add your institution or university name to your name in the Zoom meeting, which it looks like most of you already have. And then I'll be monitoring the chat for any questions that come up, but Gus, if you're fine with people just jumping in, kind of up to you. We can have people just jump in with questions, or we can just keep them in the chat and I can interject while you're going through stuff and I'll monitor it.
Cool, yeah, whatever works for me.
Okay, cool. And with that, I'll go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen and kick it off to you, Gus.
All right, good deal. Thanks, Michael, for the intro, and yeah, pleasure to be here, guys. I do work closely with a lot of you, but don't recognize some names here, so pleasure to meet you. My name is Gus Teixeira. I am a Customer Success Manager here at Instructure. Mainly work with the CSU system, but I do have other accounts in California, Washington, as well as Texas. So just wanted to take a few minutes today to demo this new analytics tool for you guys. Now, I understand a lot of you have probably already seen this, since it is something that's been available, at least in beta, for several months now. It is something we could have added to your instance several months ago. But this is timely because this did just get pushed out to production as a feature option just this past November. So I did just want to take a moment before we jump into the tool. I'm sure most of you are already vastly familiar with this, but if you did want to go ahead and enable it to your instance, you can just go to the settings area of your root account, and then towards the bottom here, you'll have this new course and user analytics. One thing to keep in mind, I did turn mine on globally. If you do that, it will deprecate the old tool, so just something to be aware of. If you have instructors that maybe are really used to that view, they may take some issues with it, so maybe setting it to allow might be a best practice, and from that point forward, instructors can kind of handle it themselves. So just something to keep in mind. But let me just jump into one of my courses here. And so like I said, I already have this enabled for my course here. And as you can notice, this did populate a box over here on the right side of my screen. This is where the tool will live once it's rolled out globally to everyone. Right now, I also have a link in my course navigation menu, which I can go ahead and hide. But like I said, it shouldn't be available once this actually gets turned on globally. So if I go into my new analytics tool for one of my courses here, you can see that it'll just default to weekly online activity time. So essentially what I'm looking for right now is two different graphs. One that is average page views for all of my sections for this course, and the other is average participation. So anything that like a discussion post or an assignment submission, that would trigger an actual participation in a course. So scrolling further down, we can see here that I also have a snapshot of all of my students in that course. So I can see how they're doing based on page views as well as participations. I can go ahead and click into my resources tab, and here I can see how many students are visualizing each of the individual resources in my course. So kind of a nice way to just get a broad view of what resources are actually being accessed and participated against. So So just nice overview. And then one of the things that I can do is I can actually populate up to 3 different either students, sections, students or sections here, where this is just nice for the instructor in case you want to hone in on a particular student. Maybe you're trying to identify students who might be at risk in your course. One of the nice things, it's kind of hard to see since I'm on a smaller screen, but you do have the option as well to display some shapes. So obviously it's already color-coded everything, but if you want to go a step further and just have it display shapes, you can do that. You also have the option of displaying things as a data table. Then it'll just sort it that way. But I think for visual purposes, a little bit nicer to have the graph form. So like I said, you know, as an instructor, it's really easy to just go back through the weeks of my course and see, you know, where activity is actually happening. If I go back far enough, you know, maybe here I can see that, okay, most of my section was viewing content in my course and even participating, but it looks like in this case, Bill and Rebecca were not very active. And so from here I can go 2 ways. If I click on an individual student's data point, like for example, Bill Blend, it'll actually tell me what he was doing that week in terms of viewership and participation. So in that particular week, it looks like Bill viewed that particular assignment. Oops, let me go ahead and close this out. Let me click on that again. Obviously, there was nothing he didn't view or participated. I can actually go in that resource tab again and see what were the resources that Bill actually viewed. So if I want to message just this student specifically, I would click on his data point. If I want to, this is where this tool gets pretty cool. If I click on the data point for my sections or for a specific section, here's where I can actually get some granularity as an instructor and see exactly who viewed a particular artifact, who didn't view it, who participated or didn't participate. Again, I can see the resources here. I can see the actual students and how many page views they had. But the really cool thing is I can actually, so let's say, you know, as an instructor, I want to message everybody who didn't participate in this resource. So I just hit that little link there. Sorry, I'll have to move the screen here. If I want to actually specify the resource, I can actually go ahead and select it, and it'll populate it as my subject line, as well as just any students who didn't view that resource. So I can send out to my students, please read the declaration by committee, blah, blah, blah. And I can go ahead and just, these students are all BCC'd, so they won't see all other students that I'm messaging. If I want, I can go ahead and just manually remove any of them, and I can go ahead and just send that message to my students. So very easy to go ahead and identify and target students who maybe aren't viewing content in your course or aren't participating with certain artifacts. And then similarly to weekly online activity time, we also have visibility towards course grade. So very similarly, this will work much in the same way. I can scroll through the history of my course just to see how students are performing against a specific section. Maybe I just want to filter out assignments and discussions and I only want to look at quizzes. I can go ahead and do that. Further down here, obviously I've drilled down to these 2 students. If I remove them from the top here, it would show me all of my students. But again, you can just get a high-level snapshot here on what their current course grade is, what percentage of submissions were actually turned in on time based on my due dates, when was their last participation in a course, as well as when was their last page view. So some nice details about the students there. But again, with course grade, again, I can click on this numerical quiz. It will give me a little bit of insight as to what the average grade is for this particular assessment, what the low is, the high, and then again, I have my little handy envelope where here I can actually message either students who scored in a particular score range. So maybe let's say I just want to message students who got between 90 and 100, which in this case was 16 students, I just want to send them a kudos here. I can go ahead and do that. Maybe instead, I actually want to just message students who got between 0 and 50%. Looks like it was just one student. So as an instructor, I can go ahead and maybe provide some words of encouragement or let the student know to come see me after class. So kind of nice there. And then again, I can go ahead and message students who have not turned in that particular assignment or students who are late on that specific assignment as well. So if they're just past the due date, they would populate here. So that's a little bit how to message students using the course grade. And then I want to show you guys just one additional thing. If you did want to get a specific view for just one student, you can do that as well just by clicking on their name down here. And then here I just have visibility over Bill's quizzes, how he's doing. So he's just plotted by himself here. I have visibility to his course grade. Again, I have his weekly online activity time as well as his total participations. And the cool thing is I also have this communication tab here. So if you as an instructor want to see if, or maybe even an admin want to see if an instructor is communicating with students, this will actually let you know how many messages have been sent back and forth. So you can see that as an instructor, I've sent out 11 messages to this particular student. He's responded to 3 of them. So yeah, just kind of gives me that, that synopsis here of what's going on. And of course, all of these different data points, I can download them as a CSV. So if you prefer to visualize things that way or set up any reports, you can go ahead and do that as well. Let me just back out here. And looks like, yeah, that's about the tool in a nutshell, guys. I will say the analytics team is also working on having a student view. So our intention is to have some data points available to students as well. We haven't made it super clear as to how much visibility they'll have in regards to, course mates data points, but at least to their own statistics, they should be able to view that as well. And that should be coming down the pike in a few months here. And then lastly, I think I mentioned, yeah, this just got pushed out in November, but it will be enabled globally for everyone in late March of 2020. I believe March 23rd is the date we're circulating right now. So just something to be aware of there. But yeah, so having said that, any questions, comments?
Quick question. You said the March 2020, is that when it's sort of forced you have to go?
Yeah, correct. That's when the old tool will be deprecated and this one will be the de facto analytics tool.
Okay.
Gus, do you guys have any kind of like pre-baked documentation and stuff available on this tool already that we can kind of disseminate if we wanted to push it out early?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we obviously already have all of the Canvas guides for new analytics, so both for admins and instructors, and I can provide you guys that after the call. And then as far as other things beyond that, I'll have to double check in the community, Michael. I would recommend you guys joining. I think there is a group for this feature priority analytics. And so if you do want to get into in-depth discussion for this type of tool, I would definitely recommend joining that group.
Okay. I'll go ahead and take note of that. If you could shoot me an email with some of these kind of links and stuff, I can go ahead and make sure that we post it out to the whole SIG group too, so that everybody has them.
For sure.
Cool.
And is this something the group has already been using, or any ideas of faculty at your institutions are starting to adopt it?
I've had the beta enabled so that people can opt into it if they wanted to. We've had some faculty use it, but apart from that, no one's really asked too much about it or has come into us with questions.
Gotcha.
Have you gotten any back on whether or not they're liking it or relying on it at all?
I think I got some questions about like the timeliness of it because I think it's a little bit delayed compared to the older tool. I don't know if that's correct, Gus.
That's a good point, Henry. I did want to mention that, and you guys can actually see it right up here. So my tool right now is current as of yesterday at 1:17 p.m., which is pretty aligned with what we say that there is about a 24-hour delay on this tool. As far as the old one, I don't know if it was actually in real time. I'm inclined to say that it probably had a similar delay since Canvas data also has about that 24-hour delay. But yeah, that is something that you might want to preface with instructors if they're looking to get super timely insights.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Actually, I had one other question. So if you enable this at a global, like institution-wide level, can you get analytics at kind of that level too? Like, so I'm thinking through this through the lens of perhaps our advising team on campus. Like if they wanted to go see if there were like any real at-risk students that they could potentially do like early messaging out to. Is there a way to kind of see anything like that?
Yeah, so right now, so we don't have this tool available on a global scale. And here just on my screen, I just backed out to my root account instance where you guys can see it does still default to the old analytics tool. From what I've heard, I mean, I haven't heard of any plans that we are building out a more interactive tool. I imagine that would take up a lot of resources to try and have something that could allow you to interact with all of students across your instance. But at the very least, you do have this view here. Yeah, it just doesn't allow for the interaction.
Yeah, for sure. I know we had that conversation probably a year or so ago, trying to figure. I mean, between building different data dashboards and this, that, and the other thing, we're trying to figure out what tools we have at our disposal that we can use to kind of identify things like that. But even just the course level is still useful for sure. Does anybody else have any questions for Gus? Analytics or otherwise?
Stop sharing my screen.
Resounding quietness.
So I'm looking for how you parse the different activities of like the quizzes versus discussions versus assignments. Maybe the course I'm in doesn't have those other type of activities. So
it could be. Yeah, if you're not getting the three little check boxes just above the graph, then yeah, that would indicate that.
Okay, that's probably what it is. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, I mean, this may end up being a really short version of the SIG if we don't have any additional comments and stuff. There was one other thing that I'm going to throw, and this I'll post it out in the follow-up email as well as in the community. We did build out a survey that we're hoping to get you guys to go ahead and fill out for us as we're planning for the coming semester. We need to get some more presenters and some ideas. We also want to see what's working for you guys and see how we can steer this to be as beneficial as possible. So I'm going to put a link here in the chat. I'll also include this in the follow-up so that everybody can go through it. You don't have to do it right now. If you miss that link, it will be shared afterwards as well. But like I said, really just trying to figure out kind of what's working, what's not. And then also if any of you guys have a topic that you really want to hear about, or if you know anybody that's doing some really crazy cool stuff that you think would be you'd like them to share, and we can give them a little nudge to go ahead and participate with us, that would be great. So again, I'm gonna send that out with everybody along with Megan so that we can kind of gather some more information and get this keep this thing going. But yeah, does anybody have any last minute follow-up stuff for Gus while we got him? No, I can't see anybody's video, so I'm just going by the silence. All right, cool. Well, then I guess in that case, we're going to give you some of your day back. And thank you, Gus, for taking the time and showing us that. If you shoot me the information, I'll make sure that we spread it out to everybody else.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
we'll do. Thank you guys for the time. I appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys. Everybody have a good day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.